What's up, everybody, and welcome back. We are here, and unfortunately, we're not doing this the week that Dario set the internet ablaze with what he was putting on screen, which was just masterful entertainment. I mean, to step up to somebody who has the moniker of a champion, I mean, that takes some serious guts, and especially on national TV, no less. So the fact that he lived to tell the tale after standing up to somebody who's a champion, and if you didn't know that person was a champion, by all means, they reminded you. So rest assured, you know,
I thought it was so symbolic when he started talking with Leroy and Devin. He was eating a banana. Bananas is a champion. He will eat champions.
But Bananas is lucky that he wasn't there again, and he didn't have his cousin Vince there either, because he still would have had flashbacks of the ass chewing that Dario gave them on Bloodlines. But that's an entirely separate conversation for a different day. Moral of the story, people, we're trying to make is that Dario is not one to be messed with. He's a force to be reckoned with, and he also proved that last night by getting his first elimination win since what? I'm trying to remember his last elimination win, actually.
So it was Wes and Nani on Rivals 3.
Because I think he only went into one elimination on Invasion. He lost to Nelson, and then he lost one to Tony on 30-30. So, yeah. So, first time beating somebody since he did it on Rivals 3 against Wes. So
I will say, on All-Stars Rival, the freshest return, like the biggest breath of fresh air for the returners that we haven't seen is Frank.
Yeah.
I would say Dario's probably number 2.
I completely agree.
He's actually putting in a lot of effort, and it's not quite like the recklessness we saw on Bloodlines, but he's playing. He's here for the competition, and he's someone that's not shoved in our face every season. So I like it.
I hope he continues to not even necessarily regularly, but I hope he's somebody that we see every other season. You know what I mean? I mean, not that I would be opposed to seeing him every season, but I'm saying if he's somebody who we see oh, they're on All Stars 5, and then we don't see them again until season 42, they pop up. You know what I mean? I would be so down for that, because he seems to be in a much different headspace than he was the last time we saw him during Invasion 30-30 era, where he basically admittedly it was not really, he didn't even really want to go on Dirty 30. I'm pretty sure Leroy said I'm going, we live together, accept the call type of thing. Yeah, that was pretty much it. Yeah, breath of fresh air with him. I would say that thing with Devin was one of the highlights of the season so far. Definitely give us something to kind of sink our teeth into. And I mean, this past week, we've had no shortage of future All-Star rivals being set up, with, if you count Corey Lay and Adam Larson, too.
Yeah, for sure. Although I will say, the highlight for the season for me was Sylvia and Kellyanne leaving, and they played the montage of all their fights with Graduation, by Vitamin C playing in the background. Really pulled at the heartstrings.
Yeah. Listen, I'm not minding this season. I definitely do feel like it's polarizing, though. I've seen some people say how it's really boring to them, but I've seen other people really enjoying it. For me personally, the thing is I don't feel like I'm being blown away necessarily. I'm not. It's not objectively speaking edge of your seat television for me, but at the same time, I'm not bored out of my mind watching it. You know what I mean? I'm intrigued enough to not look away, but I'm not at the edge of my seat wondering what's going to happen next type of thing.
Yeah, I'm hoping, I'm slightly optimistic that after this week, we're going to see a change of pace, because teams are going to start to realize that if you send 2 star holders against each other, you're going to free one up for grabs, and that's a better strategy than sending 2 women in against 2 men, which is what they did the first 3 weeks.
Do you think the star twist is hurting this season or helping it?
I don't know. I really don't mind the star twist inherently on All Stars. It's not like the skull twist on Total Madness or Double Agents where people just kind of like develop a system and it makes the game boring. I do think that there's a chance for strategy, and it's not necessarily going to just make it a predictable game. But I think it's underwhelmed so far on All Stars Rivals, but I more attribute that to the casting than the actual twist itself.
Yeah, no, I kind of agree with you. Since you mentioned before about Dario being like number 2 in terms of like the surprise returns, like or not seen for a while returns, who would you group into? So I guess we would say it'd probably be like Frank, Dario, Shane, Sam, and Ashley K. I would assume would kind of be lumped into that group as well. And then would you put Davon in there too, or would you not?
I'm probably thinking anyone that we haven't seen since anyone who hasn't done an All-Star season or the main series that overlapped with like the All-Star season, so like Double Agents, Spies Lies, Ride or Dies, 40, New Champion, whatever. Anyone that hasn't done those seasons, I consider them a throwback return, if you will. But we only have a few at this point, and I think that's one of the things that makes the casting underwhelming for All-Stars at this point is if they don't get those throwback returns.
If I would have told you coming into the season that Shane and Davon would have been less of a compelling watch than Sam and Ashley K, would you have believed me?
Well, I probably would have believed you about Sam. Sam's always been a compelling watch. I mean,
that's true. I mean,
I'm kind of just kidding, but Sam is someone that's kind of like interesting in the game because she's really not the worst. She leaves something to be desired this season, but she kind of was a thorn in the side of the San Diego team, even though she could kind of hold her own on Battle of the Seasons. But I mean, yeah, Ashley K's been she's been more interesting than I anticipated this season.
Yeah, it's not like overtly interesting, but it's like a little more than what you would expect. Like she's kind of in the similar archetype as like an Amber. Like they kind of have like almost the same archetype to an extent. They just come from different shows.
I think the difference between the two is when, at least early in her career, when Ashley came on the show, all the men just like fawned over her and they were writing her little notes in her bed and they were all like trying to get with her. And for some reason, Amber came in. Everyone was just like, I won't work with you. I don't like you. And now they're realizing the flaws of their ways. Like even Fessy is like, makes me regret swapping Amber at the end of Double Agents.
Yeah, he probably wins that season, honestly. Maybe. But yeah, probably. So I'm going to list really quickly. So are we in agreement that it would go from most compelling return to least? It would go Frank, Dario, probably Sam, and then Ashley K, Shane, then Davon.
Probably, but I think that we're going to see a little bit of a shakeup to that list. I think Shane and Davon are going to be a bit more active starting next week on the show. If you saw the mid-season trailer, they are alluding to some drama with that team. So I actually think, from what I've heard, they edited Shane's storyline down.
Well, him and Corey Lay apparently had a showmance that wasn't even shown. Like they had a showmance and then a fallout that wasn't even shown.
Yeah, that was a lot of what I was alluding to. Yeah, I don't know why.
I I think I might have my theories, but I don't know. I
Yeah.
think they're trying to protect somebody's home situation.
Oh, okay.
I think, and it's not Corey's, but I don't know for fact. But I think based on what I've kind of gathered here, but more power
Oh.
to them either way. But um,
All
yeah,
I know is coming into this season, I mean, if I was like a single female on this season looking to like date a man, you'd be screwed. Like there actually you wouldn't be screwed because there's nobody. Like I don't know what they were expecting for hookups and romances this season, but the fact that anyone gave them anything is more than I expected coming into the season. So the fact that they would edit that out, especially because it's one of like the few organic LGBTQ romances that we've had on the show, it I'm surprised that they would opt to not include that.
well, if you look at majority of the cast, I think it's like either married or in a relationship. Coming into this, I mean, as far as I know, I mean Ashley Kay's single. I think Melissa would be single. Dario single. Out of the
Turbo.
god, Turbo single.
Now this is a I don't know how much he knows about. Now he has that song out, "Wine Me, Dine Me, 69 Me."
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how much he knows about the zodiac, but we had the whole montage about him learning that he was a Cancer, went to the doctor. I think that song, "Wine Me, Dine Me, 69 Me," his zodiac sign, Cancer, is the little 69 or whatever it is, the symbol. I think Nani inspired that song.
You know, I couldn't agree more.
You know, she has the same zodiac sign. She taught Turbo about his zodiac sign. She likes wine. I don't know. I think where there's smoke, there's fire, and that song is fire. So I don't know.
Well,
That's my conspiracy theory for the week.
well, speaking of smoke and fire, we're going to have no shortage of that today because today's topic is actually going to be hot takes. You know, we've been doing a lot of fantasy casting and just cast in general breakdowns. We figured we'll flip it on its head in the best way possible, and that's by putting both of our selves in the line of fire here because, you know, some of these takes you may either like or be like, yes, we completely agree with you. And then others you might, you know, want to slit my throat. But whatever the case may be, it's a free country. So we're to say whatever's on our mind when it comes to the challenge. And also, too, one quick PSA. I didn't list him in, or neither of us did actually, in our last podcast. But another out of nowhere, depending on how you look at it, out of nowhere, because he was actually a big character on his Real World season. We forgot to list iconic King Danny Jameson. Yeah, let's just say if I saw him pop up on a cast list, I would, right next to Dunbar. Nobody's touching Dunbar in terms of like, you know, visceral reactions out of me, but Danny would be a close second to where, like, if I'm just scrolling through, I would have to stop everything that I'm doing that day, call PetSmart, say I'm going to have to cancel my dog's haircut appointment. I would be, everything is off. Just, I would take all the time in the world to just celebrate this return and this news. So
I agree with that. I would love to see him come back, but I will say he's actually one of the people where if he never came back, I think that his last appearance is kind of a nice closing moment for him in that we saw him and Melinda compete together, albeit shortly, but they were just kind of cool with each other. They both realized their relationship wasn't the right spot for them. They moved on, and it's just kind of like we'll always have our history, but wish you the best. And I think that was a good closing moment for the two of them on Battle of the Seasons.
yeah, I mean, Melinda's obviously still came back. She's actually kind of reshaped how we viewed her, I'd say, to an extent, with her performance on All Stars 2. She definitely was a pretty good competitor, I'd actually say. So, we'll have to see whether or not that remains with Danny. I'm not holding my breath. I think, if anything, one of the earlier All-Star seasons probably would have been our better bet because, just felt like that would have been more in his wheelhouse with some of the old school vibes and that. I feel like as we continue to progress here, we're going to see a more modernized All-Stars that looks a lot closer to the flagship.
I think with him, I don't know. I think him getting the time off and the willingness to just do any show is the hard part. If you give him Wes or Nehemiah to, have one friend in the game, he'd probably be okay.
Mm-hmm. I'd be really interested. I mean, Homecoming's done, but I feel like we were dangerously close to getting that. I'm pretty sure they even tried for it, if I remember.
I think they put feelers out there, but they put feelers out there for a lot of seasons.
Yeah, Homecoming not being there again really stinks. That ship's obviously sailed. That would have it's already crazy that we're talking about this. I remember 3 years ago banging on the table for Miami and doing all I could, but that ship seemed to have sailed and it's no longer a thing. But anyways, I'll digress. Today's topic: hot takes. So, like I said before, you might like some of the things we're gonna say. You might not. But without further ado, do you want me to start this off, or would you like to start?
You can kick it off. It's your show.
Okay, that's very generous of you. And since I'm generous myself, I figured it's only fitting that I give one of the more generous hot takes, because this is entirely up to chance at this point. But I figured I'd say it anyway. We know the kill card on free agents decided the elimination matchups, but here's what I'll say. That final kill card flip, the one where it was the puzzle pyramid, where we got Bananas, CT, and then we got Teresa against Laurel, that was just a random, kill card flip. We didn't get, a daily challenge. It was everybody flipping, which meant that, we couldn't have gotten a winner to maybe excuse themselves from the kill card flip. I'm willing to say here that if we had a daily challenge on that particular day, it changes how that entire dynamic unfolds with that kill card flip. And again, this is purely hypothetical, but all I'm going to say is if Teresa is in the free agents final, she's winning the free agents final. I'm saying it. That's it. Case closed. That's
even if
Laurel's there. Because if you think about it, if you put Teresa in Nani's position, let's just say, take out Nani and put Teresa in the exact same scenario, I think Teresa wins. I think she's really good with endurance and the long distance stuff.
Yeah.
And you got to factor in that Laurel still ends up dealing with Zach for a good portion of that final. So that's my personal sentiment.
Yeah, I mean, I don't agree. So that is a hot take.
Listen, I'm incredibly biased, and that's just how it's going to be. But
yeah.
For the sake of the video, we're also dangerously close to getting an all fresh meat 2 girl final. That's one of my dream scenarios that I wish would have happened. We could have gotten a Cara, Laurel, Teresa final. We were really close. If Cara doesn't break her hand and the pyramid thing, things could definitely unfold a different way. So,
yeah. Well, I guess one of my hot takes, and I don't know how hot this is. I'll warm up. I'll give you a kind of hot take. But in terms of the current challenge and the casting scenario, I kind of understand some of the direction. And a lot of people hate Big Brother players. I don't mind them at all. If they're going to bring in new people to the show, I want to know where they're coming from. And let's be honest, if there were ever two other franchises to like have a real world versus road rules dynamic, it would have been Big Brother and Survivor. People used to like talk about it back in like the mid 2000s, how they could like face off against each other. But now that we're getting people from outside of the MTV sphere to come onto the challenge, Big Brother and Survivor people make perfect sense to me because we have their backstory. We know they can compete. And we also know that like a lot of the times they're younger and fit the right demographic. I don't know what people expect. Like the real world was going to die. If you didn't watch it, it was going to die. And they're not just going to have the same people over and over and over and over. They kind of do, but they need to put some new blood into the show. So I am not on the Big Brother sucks bandwagon.
Well, the thing with Big Brother and Survivor is you also have more like they're more easily accessible if you wanted to do your research and watch those back. Whereas like 12 Dates of Christmas and like, you know, Are You Smarter Than a Swedish Meatball? Those things are not like totally like you can't just go on like Netflix and put that on. You know what I mean?
I know. I wish I could watch Survivor Turkey 8, but I can't.
I mean, I would love to test my mental fortitude against a Swedish meatball, but unfortunately, we don't have these abilities on an every day-to-day basis.
I know. Yeah, so I will continue to support some of the Big Brother people that come on, and just like any other show, there are some duds in there. There are some people that we don't want to come on, but there are some good people that could be added to the franchise.
Yeah. Well, for my next hot take, I think this is gonna be. So I could frame this in a particular way. I have it written down as this being better than insert this, but I'm gonna word it this way because I guess I don't know. But pretty much, I said that Fresh Meat 2 is a more exciting watch than Fresh Meat 1.
So I remember watching both of those seasons live, and I was much more excited for Fresh Meat 1.
Fair enough.
I thought it was more interesting. I think that the casting of the veterans on Fresh Meat 2 is just kind of lukewarm to me.
Yeah. I was mostly just intrigued by Fresh Meat 2 just because of the Kenny and Wes like overarching storyline that was kind of like the big thing. Like, I don't know, I just felt like with that storyline being such a big thing at the time, it kind of like made that season like if I didn't know, like if somebody I was friends with didn't know like that season and I just pretty much had to put it on and like tell them like, oh, this guy like, you know, was engaged to this girl and was like kind of buddies with this other guy who like, you know, basically got with his friend's like ex-fiance, and that's why they hate each other, and now they're like trying to like pretty much take each other out of this game. They would be like, oh wow, this is like really riveting stuff. And I'm sure, you know, Fresh Meat 1's got, you know, the fair share of storylines too, and it's probably easy to explain to somebody like, oh yeah, all these people have been on the show for quite some time and now they have to like pretty much team up with like an entirely stranger pretty much. But yeah, no, I don't know. It's another thing I'm biased to because Fresh Meat 2 was pretty much the first season that I watched start to finish. Yeah.
Fresh Meat 2, if I was ever going to fall off the franchise, like that was the season. That
really?
was the one. Oh, yeah. I mean, it just felt, it felt like not what I wanted at the time. And I might be in the minority there, but I don't like cold seasons for some reason. I don't like when they're like all bundled up. A lot of people love that house. I don't.
I've gotten plenty of crap over the years for people like this guy harps too much on the Fresh Meat 2 house. But
Yeah, I don't really care for the house. Like, it's a log cabin. You know, the only thing the house had going for it is that Danny Jameson lived in it for a while. So,
I mean, he drove the price up on that thing for sure.
sure, yeah.
We've got a 2005 Z-list celebrity who lived in this house. Book it now on Airbnb.
Yeah, but speaking of Fresh Meat 2, one of my hotter takes, someone that I think is overrated on the franchise, and I've just never been on board with casting this person. I know everyone wants her to come back, but I have never been a fan of Evelyn on the show. And I'm gonna say when she stopped doing the show, she was like 24, 25. She was young. She won the Inferno 3 as a teenager. She was 19. But she's just one of those people that I'm like, why is she getting cast over and over and over? Like, she was the alpha female for a while, but she always just followed the pact. And if anyone opposed her, she would like cry and bow out. Like CT, when he was at the peak of his game, he would face anyone and not care. Evelyn on the ruins, things don't go her way, she leaves because she has to go against Kellyanne. She gets all upset because she's partnered with Luke on Fresh Meat 2. And then in order to win, she has to work with the people that she's fighting against. You know, on the island, a lot of people love the moments with her and Bananas going at each other, but they have to work together to win. And that's the same case on Rivals. The whole message that she teaches Paula is feed into Bananas' bullshit and you'll win. And it works.
Well, listen, I have enough of a reason to have a bone to pick with her since she took Dunbar's key on the island. I mean, you robbed society at large of witnessing one of the greatest triumphant rookie stories we've possibly ever seen on reality television. So that alone is a sin in itself. I mean, but that's besides the point.
Well, I mean, it's almost kind of to the point, because if I was a producer making The Island, and granted I'm not, and I'm just an armchair quarterback, you don't want Evelyn to win that final key and take it from Dunbar. The whole show should have been culminating into like a big move, and she made the weak move. You know, she made the expected move and just took it from the rookie. She should have like stuck it to Bananas and been like, not only am I going to take your key, I'm going to win with your allies.
So she would have still been on Kenny's boat probably if she took...
Oh, yeah.
So what? It would have been Derek, Kenny, Dunbar, and Evelyn?
Maybe Paula and...
and Dunbar would have been on the other boat, probably.
Yeah.
That might have been actually a more competitive final race, maybe, with Dunbar and the other team. Probably not. I mean, they had Ryan.
I mean, but the point there is, like, I just always wanted her to stick to her guns and, like, be a badass and, like, I don't care. And she never did.
Yeah, I mean... You do make a good point there. She kind of had this tendency of talking this big game, and then like at the very last hour would kind of like go back against what she stood for.
Yeah, like she's one of those people that came onto the show and like doing well in the competitions was never a question. We knew that she was going to do that. So she's someone like, what is she going to do with her power? And always left something to be desired.
Yeah, I don't think we'll see her back.
I don't either, but she was young. I would love to see her back. All this said, I would love to see her back to see if she's changed and to see if she'll disrupt the status quo nowadays.
Well, since we're in the same vein here, I'm actually going to list another really controversial take, and it's kind of like falls under the overrated category. And I hate to say this about this person because they're actually one of the most likable people to have appeared on the show, and they're a fan favorite. But I think in terms of how we analyze this person's like arc as a competitor, this person tends to fall onto the I can't believe they haven't won yet. This is ridiculous, yada yada, this, that, and the third. They're, at some point they're going to win. They're the best person to never have won. I actually think that Leroy is a tad bit overrated in terms of how we kind of view him as an overall challenge player. Like, he no doubt at the peak of his challenge career was one of the best physical competitors that we've seen in terms of like pure, like just physicality, like a hall brawl or a pole wrestle type of thing. But I feel like in terms of the overall game, he's somebody, with the exception of the few times that he's played with Cam while they've been together, his earlier seasons, he always just like would ride the bananas boat until like, he would get either, eliminated or would fuck up in a daily and have to go into elimination and would just lose. You know what I mean? Like, he kind of like, for the longest time, never really had like a social game. Well, I mean, he did because he was likable, obviously, but he would mostly just play bananas' game. And like, he kind of never adapted with the puzzles, the swimming stuff. He always just kind of relied on like pure physicality, I feel like. And we've seen him in multiple finals kind of just like underwhelm. Like, X's, I mean, he had Teresa, who I would consider the best. Like, I know Sarah won and Sarah's good with puzzles. Teresa was the best girl on X's too. You know what I mean? Like, I would say. I mean, she performed the best, at least throughout that season. And
if you got to see Haley for the whole season, she probably would have been the best.
Yeah, which, I mean, that goes without saying. But, like, he had Teresa in a final as a partner, and they didn't particularly come close to winning that. So he's had his opportunities. And I don't know. I just personally feel like he's a tad bit overrated. Is he one of the best to never win? Yes. But if you ask me at gunpoint, is he one of the top two best to never win? I don't believe he is. I would actually say Shane and Corey Wharton are two guys who are actually better than he is as overall challenge competitors.
There was a point in time where I would have put Leroy higher in my rankings of best to never win. But there gets to a point in most people's challenge careers where I'm like, if it's not going to happen now, if it hasn't happened yet, it probably won't. And I think Leroy is probably in that area. I think, there's all these people, like, if they get the right scenario, they might be able to win. The best case scenario for Leroy, and I think that the one that everyone would want to see, is like another ride or dies type of format where he's with Cam. I think that they round each other well, and he kind of like was at his best when he was following her game on Double Agents. But I think what happened to him on All Stars Rivals is kind of indicative of how he plays the game. Someone like Dario will take a move and stab his friend in the back. And Leroy is not Jordan. He is going to lose some of the dailies because they're based on like puzzles and swimming and things that he's not so great at. So he has to make moves that will allow him to advance in the game because he's not going to win anything. And he doesn't seem willing to do that.
Yeah.
And then the people he protects beats him.
Like, it's not even so much the case of like where you look at somebody like an Anissa or like a Nani, where like they've never notoriously even really been like these people who, when they were in their prime, they were this and that, like, type of thing. Like, they've always kind of been viewed as like they're integral to the show as like cast members, but they're not like these like, huge cardio threats in a final. You know what I mean? Like, whereas Leroy, I mean, he's somebody who, and while you could say the same thing about him, he's not like a physical slouch to where like you'll have to like drag him or carry him on your back in a final. But like, I mean, he's just kind of like, he kind of goes to these finals and you get the same thing from him. Like, he just kind of exists in those finals. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, I think he'll continue to come back. I know he's retired, but he'll continue to come back.
Well, he's on 41, isn't he?
He's on 41. He was on 40. He was on All Stars 4. He's on All Stars 5, but he's allegedly retired.
He's retired.
Yeah.
This is just an AI clone. It's not actually him.
Yeah. But I don't know. I don't know if he'll ever get the win. And I will say, and maybe this is a small hot take, I do understand from one perspective, like if someone like Anissa or even Leroy or even Nani at this point came on the show and won, it would be a gag. People would lose their mind that it actually happened.
Yeah.
It almost feels like CT1 rivals 2 on his 9th season. And that was the longest climb to a victory based on the number of seasons.
Mm-hmm.
If you hit double digits at this point, I kind of think you're cursed. If you hit 10 seasons and don't have a win, we need someone to break that curse.
Maybe it'll be Nani.
I mean, there's quite a few people who have 10 seasons under their belt now. Like, I'm surprised that they've already hit 10. Like, John A., All-Star Rival was her 12th season.
That's crazy.
Yeah, I never, counted the numbers until recently, but it just doesn't feel like she's done that many.
Wow. That's nuts. You
So that's my little conspiracy theory. I'll call it the Illuminisa. You know, if you hit double digits and you haven't won, it's not going to happen.
Well, I've got one here actually. The skull twist on Total Madness and subsequently used on Double Agents is what started the downfall of the challenge.
I don't think it's like for like. Like, I don't think that's what caused the problem. I think that that was just the twist on the seasons that started the downfall.
It just so happened to, feel like it's more of an infrastructure thing, whereas how the season itself was constructed was a problem, but the skull twist only added to it, maybe?
No, actually. I think that other things made the challenge bad. I think those seasons could have been fine with the skull twist if they cast it differently and edited it differently, and maybe if there wasn't a pandemic.
No, that's a good point. Pandemic certainly didn't help.
Well, the pandemic really only impacted Double Agents.
Yeah.
Although I will say this, I think what happened was Total Madness filmed in late 2019 and aired right when the pandemic started. It got great ratings.
Yeah.
But that's because people are stranded inside. So for some reason, production's like, oh, this format, this skull thing is working. People are watching. I'm like, no, it's not the skull. It's not the freaking elimination.
They could have aired me literally sitting on a toilet for 3 hours and people would have watched. That's literally how nothing was. People were desperate at that time. There was the only thing that was filming on television of any sort of competitiveness at all. There were no pro sports happening at that time other than the WWE.
You realize that's when the whole fifth sport thing really started to get legs, because baseball because this was spring 2020, baseball was getting postponed, canceled, whatever, and all the sports were getting on hiatus. But we already had this season of the challenge, so MTV's like, look, we have a sport for you to watch.
Yeah,
and the sport is done running
on a Wednesday too, when nobody has anything to do.
Right, but I think that's really when that little tagline start to gain legs.
Mm-hmm.
But one thing that happened on Total Madness, and it kind of leads to another hot-ish take. I think some people will agree with me. In the more recent years, since 2018, I think that Cara Maria and Paulie have like become known as the cringy challengers, and they are. But I think the cringiest of them all is freaking Jordan. And first of all, he comes on these shows dressed up like a Disney villain, at least back in like the early 2020s or the late 2010s, like War of the Worlds, Total Madness. And like he's having fights with big old sausages in his hand, or like the thing that really made me cringe is when he was doing the trivia challenge on War of the Worlds 2. He's like calling everyone dum-dums. I'm like, you're fucking 30. Like, stop talking to people like they're lollipops and just answer the question. I can't take away the fact that he's a good challenger. Like, he always surprises me. But I will be damned if he's not cringy all the time.
Oh, I totally get what you're putting down here. Do you remember on Dirty 30? This is the same episode where he had his like obviously controversy with Jemmy and stuff. But earlier that episode, do you remember when like somebody forgot to put like the jar on like jelly or something like that, and he like brought it out into the backyard by the pool area, and he was like, "We have 3 jars of jelly, and 2 of them didn't have lids on them." And he starts like chewing everybody out.
I vaguely remember this. I more so remember this because I'm like, why am I watching this? The challenge has gotten too long if we have to have clips about jelly. But yes, I vaguely remember it. I also remember when, he was a lot younger then on Rivals 2 when he's talking about
The Great Gatsby.
Yeah, when he compares himself to the Great Gatsby. I'm like, you're not that mysterious, bro. But I do like Banana's quote where he's like, Johnny hasn't read a book. She's in the middle of Goodnight Moon. That's one of the ones that stuck with me. I think that was Bananas who said that. That was a good quote.
That sounds like something he would say.
Yeah.
Actually, so you're not going to get this reference, but since you brought up about the outfits, I have a ton of listeners who are they watch the WWE, so I'm about to make a reference and a comparison. So for those that are watching that are wrestling fans such as me, clip this. Jordan is the Seth Rollins of the challenge. That's all I'm going to say. And if you yourself want to know what I'm talking about, literally just look up on Google once we're off this, whatever. Look up Seth Rollins outfits and you'll see like what I'm talking about. Because this is somebody who like, if I'm making a comparison, obviously wrestlers are playing a character, but this dude's character when he was younger parallels Jordan's like kind of how Jordan was when he first was on the challenge. And now present day, they're both the exact same way. They're saying over the top, like, cringy things and, like, wearing these insane outfits. Like, it's actually quite wild. Like, the striking, like, arcs between these two people. But anyways, I digress. That was a tangent, but people will know
I don't get the reference, but I trust you. I trust your judgment.
Yeah, no. I mean, in a week in which WWE is once again taking over the challenge, I mean, I had to, kind of make this reference.
Yeah, apparently we're getting someone who's WWE related next season.
I mean, they're going to continue the strong lineage of The Miz and Lio Rush.
Yeah.
Well, actually, if you want to be technical, it'll just be Lio, because The Miz actually did the challenge first, and then the WWE. So,
yeah, he's the archetype. I mean, he is the success story. To his credit, like I was listening to Coral a while ago, and she was like, "Mike is a straight up inspiration. He went from this kid, no idea about the world on the real world, and now he's a WWE superstar." But I'm like, Coral, you are right, because he actually made it happen.
No, so what's insane about that, and not to get too off base, but in 2011, so what? Inferno 2 would have been what, like 2004?
Filmed in 04, yeah.
Filmed in 04, and that would have been what, his last season, right? Mm-hmm. So he would have went to the WWE, or at least started training. Yeah, he would have went to the WWE, I believe, in like 05. Mm-hmm. Pretty much, like, to make a comparison here, WrestleMania is basically WWE's Super Bowl.
Mm-hmm.
And the main event, which is like the match that goes on last, is considered like the biggest match on the show. He went from the challenge to pretty much main eventing WWE's Super Bowl against John fucking Cena in the span of 5 years. Like, that is like insane. Like, we're not talking about just making it to the WWE. He pretty much made it to the pinnacle 5 years after winning the Inferno too.
Yeah,
like,
no, I mean, he is like an actual celebrity.
Yeah. But since we were just talking about Jordan, I'm gonna actually have to give him his just due. He might be a little in the cringe department, but we're just gonna solely talk about him from a resume standpoint for a second. I think I'm actually in the acceptance stage right now, and I don't mean this in a bad way at all. When I say acceptance, I'm just I am a big CT fan, and I've been a big Jordan fan at times as well. I'm kind of like in the in-between with Jordan right now, where I'm more of a fan, but I'm just kind of like, whatever. I am willing to, I think, finally concede, though. I think he might be the GOAT.
Yeah, I agree with that. I've agreed with that for a while. But you'll get like chewed apart if you don't say certain people are the GOAT. I will say he was kind of boring to watch on season 40 because like almost no one was actual competition to him.
We need Kieran back.
Oh yeah, but I will. Every season he's on, he like does something that just like impresses me, and I've seen every challenge season. And we were talking about how the challenge is like America's fifth sport, and it's not a sport, and I kind of think that one of the best things about it is that someone like Jordan, who is disabled and probably wouldn't get the time of day in like football or baseball, or at least he'd have to really prove himself. He can be the best at this game, like bar none. And he is someone with a disability, but he excels regardless. And I think that's one of like the greatest strengths that this show has, is that they allow people to overcome things that have held them back.
Yeah, I'm finally willing to concede that. I'm actually kind of at the point too where this order that I would have in my pecking order would actually be pretty controversial. I've actually got Jordan, CT, Bananas as third now.
Oh, Bananas is third?
For my personal.
I mean, Bananas has the most wins. He also has the most losses. So, he just has a big resume, and it's not a bad resume, but it's a lot to consider.
Yeah, there's a lot of variables. Same with CT as well.
Oh, yeah.
They're both, Darrell's actually somebody who a couple of years ago, if you would have asked me in like 2000, like, pre Double Agents All-Stars stint, Darrell, I probably had Darrell like 2 or 3, and now I think he might be like out of my top 5.
I've always liked Darrell, but he's only really like impressed me on one season. You watch the Inferno 1, 2, and the Gauntlet. His strategy, and even on Fresh Meat, is always just float in the middle. It wasn't until the Ruin that he impressed me. Yeah. Actually, no, that's true. Invasion, he impressed me as well. So he does have a couple seasons. He's by no means bad, but is he top tier? I don't know.
It's like the seasons he didn't win were the ones where he actually like showed me something. But like the thing is like we kind of measure people by like their wins, and like the ones that he did win, it wasn't necessarily like seasons we look back at as like, with the exception of maybe Fresh Meat, they're not really seasons we look back as like, oh, those are like, that's a signature win type of thing. You know what I mean? They help boost your resume, but he doesn't have that like, I feel like quintessential victory that like let's say Bananas, you could point to like 3 of Bananas as wins, even 4 if you want to count Total Madness for that matter, as like, oh, okay, these are like, rivals, exes, free agents, and like Total Madness. Those are like 4 wins you could like look at and be like, oh, these are like signature victories where like this person showed something. CT, you look at like Rivals 2, like maybe War of the Worlds, I mean in the final itself at least, and then you look at like his last 2 seasons, like Double Agent, Spies, Lies, and Allies. You could throw Invasion in there if you want. Jordan, I mean, take your pick. I mean, you've got like no shortage of impressive wins there. So it's kind of
win on Spies, Lies, and Allies. Not to get too far off track, but his Spies, Lies, and Allies win is like akin to season 40 for Jordan. Like they didn't even have to try.
Yeah,
everyone was too scared to fight them, and they just kind of let them win. Yeah. And then they got to the final, and they excelled in everything, just like we thought they would, and they won.
Let's go! Wow, what a novel concept. The best person here won a season, and we didn't even try to get them out. Wow.
Yeah.
What do you know?
I think I've mentioned this before, but this is another one of my hot takes that I think it's only a hot take because people love, like, for some reason, everyone is so in love with Svetlana. And I think the duel would have been so much better if they sent Svetlana home in that elimination.
The one against Beth?
Yeah. Now, I know Beth isn't like a top tier competitor, but all of the other girls had some level of fear in her. And what was going to happen if she stayed in the game is she was going to get a very humanizing edit where people like Anissa and Beth are relying on her. And she actually is kind of a force against the other girls in the house. And none of them wanted to call Beth into the duel because she was bigger than them and could win. And she was like, she wasn't going to beat Jody, but she was the one that like actually had Jody a little bit scared, like during the pirate ship, like push people off the plank challenge. So I think it would have been a much more interesting season. We all know after the Push Me duel, it wasn't just Svetlana winning. They had to talk about that because it was such like a gray zone as to what happened. But we all watched it. We all know Beth was the stronger woman there.
Yeah, and then, the same exact thing happened with CT. And I was just... that elimination concept should have been deaded after that Beth and Svetlana elimination, in my humble opinion. They should have done something to where they're like, yeah, we're going to like have one of these eliminations be like a choice twice just so we don't get to Push Me.
But in production,
TV, I guess, but
I'm sure production wanted West and CT in the final. I think that's like the ideal world.
More than likely.
But in their defense, they put their money where their mouth is. They got rid of Beth for ripping the Caribbean or ripping the little flag. They did the same for CT, and I think that they probably didn't want to send him home in such a fashion, but they followed through. They were consistent in their judgment.
West still wins that final simply due to the soccer kick, in my opinion.
Probably because of that.
Yeah. And I think if you take out the soccer, this is an even hotter take I should have included. If you remove the soccer kick from that final, I think he loses to CT or Brad.
Yeah.
Because didn't Brad come really close to him, even despite the soccer kick?
Brad was like seconds behind, despite that.
It all came down to the soccer kick.
Yeah.
Wow. Brad on both duels, even though the second one was most likely staged by the 3 men.
Yeah. But I don't know. I just always wonder, looking at that season, like, Beth was the villain and a fun one to watch.
Yeah. Well, speaking of villains, this is and fun ones to watch. This is one's definitely going to fall into the more controversial take, and this will be my final one because it's all about hot takes, and there's no hotter one than this. This person was most certainly the villain on their final season, and was fun to watch before their arc was kind of cut short in terms of what we were visibly able to see on screen, and that was D. I think in a world in which circumstances didn't kind of prohibit her from basically being showcased, she was on her way to becoming the female face of the show from pretty much Total Madness to now.
Yeah, I agree. She was someone, I think the interesting thing about her story at the time was she was like raised in the school of Wes, and now like it was almost like Wes has created a monster, and she's turning around and like she probably would have taken a stab at him at some point down the road.
Oh, yeah, and that would have been a compelling storyline.
Oh my god, yeah, totally. I think that, there's no way to say who's the star of the season for sure, but I think if we look at the confessional count on Total Madness up until episode 12, I think it is, 13 and onward, she got edited out. I think she's the one that had the most screen time. So she definitely was a super prominent figure that season.
Yeah, her and Rogan would have for sure popped up at some point as exes, I feel like, by now. Maybe. Yeah, you can't say that because they never even booked an exes yet, but there's a conceivable world where they would have been casted on this current season, possibly.
Yeah. Have you ever seen so I don't know if people watching this know this, but when they changed the edit for D on Total Madness, the episode, I think it is 13, the one where they have like the box challenge where they're like suspended on a moving car and they have to like grab flags and push down boxes, and D is next to Bailey. The unedited version aired in Canada, and I must have been in Canada that week because I've seen it. But it's a whole different story than what we see on TV, and it's so much more compelling. Like, people are trying to get Dee out of the game, even though she has a skull. She was off, like, having shower sex with Rogan, and Nisa's watching, and then they go into the challenge, and she's just unnecessarily fighting Bailey, and then everyone's getting mad, and then they kind of blindside her at the elimination by sending her in against Maddie, and they have this whole thing staged where Johnny asks Rogan's permission, and they do show this part to send Dee in, and he gives permission, but she's like much more upset about it, and she comes back with a vengeance, and we don't see any of that, but it's a much better story than what we did see.
Yeah, I remember the episode they actually did end up airing on MTV. It was a really tough watch to get through because they were like almost basically not showing Dee like on the screen. Like, we were seeing an elimination with her in it. Even the Jenny Hall brawl, we don't even like see Dee in it. It's like so weird. They try to act like she wasn't there. It's like, you guys realize, like, we understand what, like, you're severing ties with this girl, but like, you filmed this like 7 or 8 months prior. Like, we're not insinuating or thinking that you're showing us like and trying to promote us somebody who like right this present day. Like, we're seeing something that's already a finished product. Like, we're not gonna like kill you over this. Like,
yeah, and this is another thing that I don't know if this is a hot take or not. I don't really think it's a hot take, but it's one thing to not give someone a platform for, if they're using it terribly, and even in this case, like stopping using Dee as your talent for being a Murray. But I don't think anyone comes into these shows thinking that they're going to see a role model on reality television. Like, I don't know why they thought that we expected any better from most of these people on the show. And I do think that, especially because there were so many eyes on Total Madness, it was a bit of a disservice to edit her out completely because she was so central to the show. I would understand them not casting her in the future. I would understand, I understand the controversy, at least to some degree, and why they made the decision that they did. But I think that it did ruin the season, and that's the ultimate product that they are putting out for the world.
Yeah, I don't think they were pleased with the fact that their hand was kind of forced into severing ties with her. Like, I think that was a begrudging decision on their part. Like, damn, like we've got to sever ties with somebody who we're investing a lot of stock into currently on our show.
Yeah, it's funny to look back on War of the Worlds 1 and like all of these big figures on the show have like just disappeared because
Bear literally spent time in a jail cell. I don't even know if he might be out now, but
he's out and I don't know why I know this, but he's like in Brazil hooking up with 18-year-olds. Like,
oh, so he's skating a thin line.
His whole shtick right now is barely legal. Like, he's out of jail. He's fresh out the slammer with young girls, and that's his thing. That's what it seems like. But then they also have like Georgia that they seem to have put on some probation. They had Maddie, and she was, they ended employment with her. They put a lot of investment, MTV, into Maddie. So, and then Theo was on hiatus for a while, not because he did anything terribly wrong, but because he shot a champagne cork into his eye.
He would have continued doing shows pretty regularly, I would assume. He was supposed to be on 35, I think, and then they had to replace him because of what happened.
All we were left with from War of the Worlds was Josh. That's what we got, Josh.
Wow. Thanks a lot, Alan. Or Alan, actually.
Yeah. I mean, they could have brought back other people. I really wanted to see Shailene come back, but...
You're telling me. I was chomping at the bit just waiting for JP.
Yeah. The Nolan twins... Actually, I do think the Nolan twins would have been fun to see brought back.
Yeah, they actually possibly would have been pretty decent additions. Morgan, probably, if she didn't get involved with Bananas, would have kept doing challenges, I think, or at least a few more, and maybe been pretty good cast member, I would say.
Yeah, we had Zahida for a moment.
Zahida, actually, wasn't she like supposed to be on? What, like, I could have sworn she was almost on, like, I don't know if it was Double Agents or Spies Lies. Somewhere between 35 and 37. Oh, wait, no. Hold on. She was... Wow, I can't believe I forgot this. She actually was technically on War of the Worlds, too.
Yeah.
And she left early.
Yeah, because there was a death in her family. I think that she almost was on 30 Total Madness. And then I think her name was floated for a while for 39. Battle for New Champion.
Yeah. You know who actually I feel like would have been pretty good? I mean, obviously, he had some pretty tragic circumstances himself. I felt like Ashley Kane would have been like a really good addition to the show.
It's funny because when they started bringing people in during Vendettas, there was like a bunch of people online, a bunch of people meaning like 10, who were talking about other UK stars that would be good to migrate onto the challenge. And Ashley Kane's name was brought up a lot. Another one that I remember hearing a lot, and I'm kind of surprised that she never actually made it onto the challenge, is this girl named Georgia Steele. And the only reason that I say her name is because she was on X on the Peak with Laurel and Nicole.
Marlon.
And I don't think she got into a relationship on that show with Callum, who did the UK
39.
challenge, and 39. Yeah. So like she's kind of challenge and tangentially related.
That was the same way with Annalise Talavera for a while before she got on 38. Like she was kind of somebody I always saw his name like floated around as like alternate or like possibly going to be used, called.
I remember Michaela was one of those people for a while before Spies, Lies, and Allies, and then we got her and she goes home first, and everyone's like, now what do we have?
Now we just have
Gibby
now,
or whatever his name is.
Now all we're left with is an overabundance of Josh, Burger King after certain daily challenges, and the sheer memory of Dunbar. Mm-hmm. That's all we're left with, which is, you know, when you take into consideration that one of those things is a figment of our imagination at this point, being Dunbar, obviously, but it's not a lot to cling on to.
The new thing that people like to predict for the upcoming seasons of the challenge is which Paramount movie is going to be affiliated with one of the daily challenges. You know how like they had Puss in Boots for one, and then they had Gladiator 2.
Yeah.
Or a challenge on season 40, so
maybe they'll have Scream next or something. Although
that'd be cool.
Yeah,
you get to stab people on the challenge. That's fun.
Well, that almost happened a couple times, depending on some stories that you believe. But
yeah, and then like, didn't people get to like win tickets to the premiere of some movie? I don't know if people actually use those tickets. Like, I don't go to the movies anymore.
That sounds correct, actually. I'm actually one of the few people that actually does go to the movies. I saw 2 movies in February. Companion was one of them, and the other one was Hard Eyes, and I thoroughly enjoyed both of them. I think Companion's a little bit better, but Hard Eyes is the one that's getting the more like critically acclaimed like buzz right now. Probably in large part because it's a Valentine's Day slasher. I guess it's more marketable. But Companion as a standalone movie. Have we talked about Barbarian before?
Mm-hmm.
So the same people that produced Barbarian, same creators and everything, they produced Companion. So
okay, cool.
Yeah, when this thing comes on streaming, don't watch. I mean, I'm assuming you haven't watched the trailer yet.
No.
I highly suggest watching it, but don't watch the trailer. Just go in blind.
Yeah,
it's good stuff.
Okay, I will watch it. I wonder if it's coming to. Is it associated with Paramount at all?
That's actually a great question. So the Hard Eyes movie, that actually I feel like will come onto Paramount because it's the same like production company that did the last few Scream movies, and I know they were kind of associated with Paramount a little bit.
Yeah, I might have just made the mental connection in my mind because do you remember the movie Smile? For some reason, was associated with the challenge, and they had like those promos of all the people doing like the scary smile, and then Smile 2 came onto Paramount Plus. I watched it there. It was just okay.
To be honest with you, I actually haven't seen either one of the Smiles.
I think both of them are okay, but both of them were a little bit long for my taste. Like it's a horror movie; it doesn't have to be 2 hours.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to like make judgment off it just because I haven't watched it, but just based on the trailers, it seemed like kind of like something that was like one of those stereotypical horror movies that like you see like, oh, we know you'll get a good jump scare out of it. Like it's very like advertisey in the trailers. Like it's enough to grab people's attention, similar to like Ouija and like Annabelle and all those movies. Because that was like an era too where we were having like people would go and see these Annabelle and Ouija movies just because they were like very clickbaity type of thing. Like I fell victim to that when I was like a teenager. I would see those movies, and I look back at them now as I'm older. I'm like, wow, these were terrible.
Yeah, although Annabelle comes from The Conjuring.
Yeah,
and Lorraine Warren. Those 2 are on like the first season of the challenge. Road All Stars, yeah. They like do some like ghost related challenge, and they see Ed and Lorraine Warren.
What, like they're actually there?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. I forget what they had to do. It might be the one where they had to like stay in like a haunted jail cell or something.
Yeah, I would actually say so. Annabelle is probably the better of the two movies, but like between Ouija and Annabelle, I guess I would say. But like Ouija's so stupid. Like,
I haven't seen that.
eh, like literally so dumb.
Yeah.
Wow.
I will say we always get these dumb spy themes on the challenge. I've always wanted a horror movie theme or like I think that would be cool.
Listen, I'm not opposed to it. Like if you make that work.
Yeah. I mean, I'm a sucker for a good theme. And they don't have to be like that deep. Like we don't need to have like explosions everywhere, but if you're gonna do a theme, give me horror. Make it a horror movie, make it Escape from TJ Island or whatever you want to do, but like I think that'd be fun.
That actually would be fun. And they shot it during like Halloween season or have it air during Halloween season.
I mean, whatever. They're going to film it for a year and air it for a year, so it doesn't really matter.
We're going to be in like Easter season. And they're talking about Jason Voorhees.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, whoever can retrieve this mask first from the top of this like tree will get like their skull and be able to run my final.
Yeah, festive.
Yeah,
but I'd be here for it.
Yeah, well, until next time, folks, we're gonna have to come up with another topic for the next podcast. But actually, that might be a good topic, something horror movie related, if we could find some semblance of a correlation. Scariest moments on the channel,
yeah, that could be fun.
or what horror movie character cast members would be, something in that vein.
Yeah, I think a lot of them would be the first kill.
Right.
You know, the person that just goes away.
Anissa would be what's the movie where it's not The Shining. What's the movie where somebody like gets killed in the it's like a really old movie where the girl's showering and then the person like
Is that Psycho?
Like, yes, Psycho. Yes.
I've never actually seen it, but I just picked up what you put down.
I'm not going to further elaborate on what I was going at with that, but
yeah.
Yeah, no. Until next time, thank you all for tuning in.
Thank you.